are your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Plenty to sink our teeth into today. Stephen Nelson signing yesterday. Deshaun Watson becoming that much more available now that he's not on the commissioner's exempt list. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation we've had. We're going to continue the NFL conversation with a guy who's doing broadcast work these days after many years in the league as one of the best kickers. Jay Feely from CBS joins us here on Birds 365. Jay, first things first, my apologies. And I do this all the time. I do a national show, and I always have to factor in time zones when booking guests. I don't know why. Maybe because you kicked a lot on the East Coast, and I always thought of you as an East Coast guy. I didn't even realize you're out in Arizona these days. So my apologies for screwing up the times.
Right early. You got me up this morning. Normally, I only get up this early to go on the golf course. So
That's what we all try to do, to get on the golf course. But I'm thrilled to have you, Jay, because I want to forgive me because I'm going to get into some kicker stuff with you because I'm always interested the mentality, the sentiment of a kicker. Here in Philadelphia, we have a guy, Jake Elliott. I always say Jake is great. I don't know if you know Jake, but he's great at everything. I mean, anything that has a swing, he's a great golfer.
Yep.
Obviously, he's a great kicker. He's a great baseball, softball player. He's a great ping pong player. He does everything well. And then all of a sudden he has some hiccups with and by the way, not the long kicks, not the 50-plus yarders, the 33 yarders, the extra points, the short kicks. What goes through a kicker's mind, a former Pro Bowl kicker, Jay Feely, when that you didn't hit the ball correctly and maybe you start getting into a bit of a slump?
Well, first of all, kickers are the best all-around athletes on the football team. That's why, Jake. I'm half joking, but if you take, a 10-sport tournament, where you say, okay, you're going to play 10 different sports. You're going to play basketball, softball, baseball, golf. The kickers will do, if not win it, they're going to be right up there, on every team. It's interesting because I think a lot of fans don't know that. They don't know that most kickers play a lot of different sports and are pretty good at everything. When it comes to the mentality of kicking, it's all about repetition. It's all about believing in yourself. It's all about having a specific routine that you're going to go through. Jake's an excellent kicker. He's one of the best in the league. When you have times where sometimes you miss, especially the shorter ones, sometimes it can be being too casual, being too confident and not going through your entire routine. If you miss those extra points, you miss those short ones. The extra points are a little different now because once they changed them, sometimes those kicks have more pressure than any other field goal outside of like a game winner because you're expected to be at 100%. And when you miss one of those, then that pressure continues to multiply. And you've seen that have an impact on kickers around the league at times.
Jay, let me ask you about kickers and relationships, because I think there's a real interesting dynamic in the National Football League between kickers and quarterbacks. Because depending on what the quarterback does, he either leaves the pressure on you or takes the pressure off you. You either add to the pressure on him or take the pressure off him. You're kind of working in loggerheads because his job is to get it all the way into the end zone and make your job easy to kick a PAT. But if you have to settle for a field goal, well, yeah, you're getting him 3 points when he didn't get the job done, getting him into the end zone. How are your relationships with quarterbacks? Were they always very good? Were they sometimes very testy? How did quarterbacks and kickers play off each other?
It depended on the guys, certainly. Most of the quarterbacks were really good golfers as well. So you'd find that the kickers and the quarterbacks golfed a lot together and developed those relationships together. So you always spent a lot of time together. And they're going to come up to you. If you're at the end of the game, they're coming to you and they're asking you what yard line you need to get to. And they want to know that information. And so you have a good relationship there. Me, I always wanted them not to score so that I could kick a field goal, unless it was a game-winning situation where we needed that touchdown. But mentally, you have to think that way. Like, you have to think, I want them to kick a field goal on this drive. I want to be able to have that kick, because you don't ever want to be thinking negatively, no, I don't want them to score. I'm going to go score a touchdown here. I don't want to have to kick this kick. And then you have to go out there and kick it, and you're not in the right mental frame of mind. So, that's the approach you have to have every time. So you're not I don't think you're ever, down or upset if they don't score, because you're already preparing yourself mentally to have to go out there and make that field goal. And it's similar, like, let's say they're at the 30-yard line. No, let's say the 20-yard line. It's going to be if they throw it in, it's 3rd and 8, they throw it incomplete. It's going to be a 38-yard field goal. Well, I'm already in my mind telling myself they're going to get sacked here. It's going to move it back 10 yards, and it's going to be a 50-yard, 50-yard field goal. So that if it happens, then I've already prepared myself mentally for that. If we actually gain some yards and I still got a kick, well, great. It's an easier kick now. But those are the kind of mind games that you play with yourself.
Speaking of mind games, I want to talk about the long snapper and the holder, Jay, because when you guys miss kicks, you get blamed. And, it's a battery, so to speak, with those guys, the long snapper, the holder. I remember I was covering Blair Walsh, who people remember he was a Pro Bowl kicker as a rookie, and then he just kind of fell off the table.
Yeah.
He told me he lost his holder. He trusted his holder, and they went to a new guy, and it had that big of an impact. How much can shifting those guys have an effect on a kicker?
Well, I was a guy that played on 6 different teams, that had many different holders. We switched holders when I was at the Jets in the middle of the year because our special teams coach got mad at the holder. He dropped the ball and on a game-winning kick, he's like, "That's it. He's done. Go find somebody else. I don't care who it is." And so we literally switched to a backup quarterback to that next game. It certainly can have an impact. They can certainly make you miss every if they want. No fan would ever know it. If you put the ball 2 inches forward to where the spot is, or you put it, an inch or two right or left, that's going to have a major impact on that kick, and nobody would ever know. And it's your job as a kicker to, number one, develop that relationship and help teach them, coach them to do it exactly the way you want and to be pretty specific about it and demanding. But 2, you have to take all the blame for each miss. You can't come back blaming your snapper, your holder, at least publicly. And I think you're a good special teams coach. You're looking at that and you're seeing, if it's a bad snap and that snapper's giving them laces every time, he's making both of those jobs so much harder. And if you have a bad hold, you're making that kicker's job so much harder. So it certainly is a battery, and they certainly all work together.
Jay, I want to ask you about coaching. Like you mentioned, 14 years in the league, 6 different organizations. So you certainly changed teams, and coaches changed teams while you were there. How long does it take when a new coach comes in and he's setting up his new system and he's trying to instill his culture with the team? How long does it take before you can say, all right, this is the new coach's team? Can it be a week? Does it need to be a month? Does it need to be an entire season? What was the best transition you ever saw? Was there one that, he took over, but nothing really ever changed and it didn't work? So that's why we moved on pretty quickly. How much is transition in the National Football League from one coach to another? What kind of a process is it? What time frame does it take?
Well, Rex Ryan came into the New York Jets and he was replacing Eric Mangini. Eric Mangini, who, was hardcore, tried to be Bill Belichick to a fault. And Rex comes in, he's the opposite kind of guy. Rex doesn't want to have rules really. He wants it to be fun, exciting. He wants guys to come to work and have a great time, to want to come to practice. And his personality is so big, that he implemented it right away. And it worked. It worked for Rex for the first 2 years, went to the AFC Championship twice. But the other thing with Rex is that you have to have great leadership in the locker room, because he doesn't want to fine guys. He doesn't want to be a disciplinarian. And so if you have great leadership in that locker room, then it's going to work, and you can then self-police that locker room. Once they stop doing that and they got rid of guys, Alan Faneca leaves and, Thomas Jones leaves, and, you got guys on both sides of the ball that aren't there anymore, then all of a sudden, it falls apart and it doesn't work anymore. But his personality was so big that he had an immediate change on that team. And I never had more fun. I never had more fun going to practice, going to work every day. And Rex was crazy. Like, you didn't know what Rex was going to do. And he would do crazy things every day. I mean, I remember at one time, these 2 guys got in a fight, and ironically, it was on a field goal attempt. It was one of the guys rushing off the end. It was one of the offensive linemen, and they got in a big old fight. And Rex took the guy, the DB was rushing, and he's like, "Listen, I want you to go in. You don't have to do the rest of practice. We had like an hour left in practice. He's like, go in, take the rest of the day off. He just make sure you're gone from that locker room when practice ends, because I don't want him coming back in there with you there. You can have the rest of the day off. It's just kind of funny. Always, everything he did was kind of different than, your disciplinary coaches would never do that. They're not going to diffuse a situation like that. But, Rex was smart in that way, and we had a lot of fun, and we won a lot of games.
Hey, Jay, one thing I've gotten from covering this league is there are certain players that their peers are in awe of. I used to get that with Randy Moss. I used to talk to cornerbacks, and they were like, this guy's different. I get it with Aaron Donald today. I talked to Brandon Brooks. He's like, this guy's unbelievable. And I asked him who the second best defensive tackle was. He said, nobody's close. You might as well not have a number two. Is Justin Tucker that for kickers? Because I look at that guy and the ball just jumps off his foot. It is unbelievable to me.
It's amazing how, he can hit the ball so hard and it explodes off his foot. He gets tremendous height, but he has the ability to have the accuracy as well. Normally when you hit the ball that hard, you don't have the great accuracy. Janikowski could hit the ball like that, but he wasn't near as accurate as Tucker was. So that's what's really impressive is just that he has that leg strength, that he has the explosiveness of the ball, but while at the same time being incredibly accurate and being able to kick his best under pressure, because he's excellent when the game is on the line and those pressure moments. He does an amazing job. And he is a special player. And I've said all along for the last, 15, 20 years, Adam Vinatieri right now is the best of all time. But Tucker is quickly, he's better than Adam was. His percentage is much better than Adam. He hasn't had those big clutch moments like Adam had in the Super Bowls, although he helped them win a Super Bowl, but not the game winners like Adam had, the kicks, in the snow against the Raiders. He hasn't had those moments, but his performance has been the best of all time.
Jay, you are a guy who stayed in the league till you're 38 years old. Kickers can do that. More power to you. But you're now a couple of years removed from the league, so I know this might be a tricky question because you have to answer it with where you are with your situation in life. I don't know if you have or haven't been vaccinated. If you were going into camp and you were dealing with players that weren't vaccinated, maybe you'd be one of them. How much is this going to be a conversation between players? Are they going to attempt to influence them each other? Is someone who is vaccinated going to try and talk his teammate who's not vaccinated into getting vaccinated? Is the guy who's not vaccinated going to say, what the hell were you doing thinking getting vaccinated? How much of a conversation do you think it's going to be just between the players themselves?
Well, I'm sure they have a tremendous amount of conversations. When you sit in those locker rooms, you're always talking to yourself and to everyone else. You're always, sitting there trying to figure out life. I was on the executive committee with the NFLPA for most of my time, so we're always talking about those type of issues. We're always sitting in the locker room, bantering around. And this issue is more personal than any of those other issues, and I think this issue, you see why guys are emotional about it. But at the same time, you have that dichotomy of you have to do what's best for your team. And sometimes you have to put aside what's best for you personally for what's best for your team. And so that's where I think the challenge exists in that locker room and for those coaches. And, where of course it's best for your team and the organization to get the vaccine because it's going to make it easier and because of the rules that they've set up. But that individual is weighing, is it best for me individually, as well as best for my team, and obviously some people don't believe it's best for them individually, so they have this constant battle between themselves and what's best for their team. I think it's a really difficult situation for each one of those players to be in.
You're in an interesting spot, Jay, because you had so much experience with the NFLPA. And let's face it, the NFLPA is supposed to fight for the players. Now, the vast majority are on board because it's going to be a competitive disadvantage when you talk about the vaccinations. But there have been certain high-profile guys. We know who they are. They've been very vocal about it. How much of a difficult spot do you think it puts the union in? I mean, you want to fight for the player, but you also want to make everything safe for everybody else. how do you kind of walk that tightrope? Is it even possible to walk that tightrope?
Yeah, I'm surprised that Union hasn't fought back more. I really am, for the individual players' rights. You know, you're gonna represent a player who gets arrested for domestic violence, and you're going to represent him fully, because that's what your job is as a union. You're going to fight for somebody who, you know, gets in an accident, a DUI. You're going to fight for them, and you're going to defend them fully. But they haven't done that in this case, and I'm surprised that the union hasn't taken a stronger stance and fought for those individuals and those players that have an issue and don't know if they want to take this vaccine, because they feel like they don't know going forward what might happen to them or you know, to individuals. And there are negative consequences. There are things that have happened to people here in the United States as a result of taking the vaccine. So, you know, I'm surprised that they haven't fought for the individual rights, because they do that on almost every issue. And they haven't done that on this.
Jay, last thing, what do you got on your broadcast plate coming up this year?
I'll be doing games for CBS. You'll be just see me up there in the booth all week. So it'll be fun. I can't wait for the season to start. There's, you know, so many uncertainties still. I think there's more uncertainties. Well, not last year with COVID and everything, but when you look at personnel and you look at players and quarterbacks, you know, I think there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of uncertainties still that you have to get through, you know, this training camp period and figure out what's going to happen with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, and figure out, you know, all these different uncertainties that are out there. And excited to see Tom Brady and see what happens with those Bucs, and if he can continue to ward off Father Time. And I wasn't surprised at all that he went in there. You talk about changing the culture as coaches. You know, a guy like Tom Brady can come in and completely change a culture on a team. And that's exactly what he did down there in Tampa, and led them all the way to the Super Bowl. And that didn't surprise me one bit, but it'll be a lot of fun. Can't wait for the season to start.
Jay, here in Philadelphia, we're an NFC team, so we get mostly Fox games, but I think we got at least a couple CBS games. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to get you on the call this year. Thanks for hopping on with us early today. Again, my apologies. I didn't know you were in Arizona. For the miscommunications on the time. Since you're up, why don't go hit a bucket of balls or two? Appreciate you coming on.
Take care, guys.
That is Jay Feely. He does color analyst work for CBS. For the upcoming NFL season. Been doing it for the last couple of years. And yes, only 14 years in the league as an NFL kicker. And sorry, Eagle fans, I like the guy because he's been in the league 14 years, spent 2 years with the Jets. He related more Jet stories than anything else. He's one of my ex-kickers as an ex-Jet.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.